What is up, guys? My name is Emiliano. I want to show you guys what are the top 5 muscle groups that every man needs to have that V-shaped body, which everybody always wants to achieve. It's always the main factor when it comes to attraction or overall aesthetics when it comes to the gym. So let's just get right into it. Number 1 is going to be the lats, which is part of the back. 2 is going to be the lateral delt. A lot of these muscles are very specific muscles, and I deliberately did that because although they are part of one muscle, for example, here I put lateral delt, here I put front and rear delt, although they are technically part of the same muscle, which would be the deltoids, the shoulders. They do dictate a lot when it comes to how your physique looks, depending on if they are developed or not. Why? Because you can't just expect to do a shoulder press and expect your whole deltoid muscles to develop. So that's why I deliberately put them as 2 separate muscles. So that's gonna be lateral delt is the second one. Third one is the front and rear delt. I kind of put them there in their own little group. Fourth is the biceps, which is a part of the arms, and then, or it's technically its own muscle, and then the upper chest, which is a part of the pectoralis muscles. Now let's get into it. Why did I put lats as the first muscle that you want to do? Well, when it comes to V shape, a lot of people think that you can widen your shoulders. However, that is a myth. You can't really widen your shoulders. You can only create the illusion that you have wider shoulders. And in order to do that, well, you got to focus on that back. The back muscles create the illusion that your back is overall bigger, especially from looking at yourself from the back angle, right? Or even from the front, right? Whenever you have developed enough lats, this creates the illusion that you have kind of like a V shape, especially since a lot of what comes into play when it comes to building that V-shaped body is the size of your waist. And of course, you cannot change the size of your waist, or you can only get it so small, right? I mean, you can change it by, losing weight in your abdominal area, but you can't really change the size of your waist. But what you can do is grow your lats. And in order to do that, you can do either pull-ups or lat pull-down. Now, why specifically these 2 exercises? Because when it comes to lat width, not lat thickness, right? Vertical pulling movements are usually what is best for this type of growth, due to the muscle fibers which align with a vertical pulling movement. Like pull down doesn't really matter what kind of grip you use. I usually like to change it up just to fully develop the lat muscles. But yeah, so you can do either a lat pull down or pull up with weights, which is what I use to build my lats. But yeah, moving on to the lateral delt. Why is the lateral delt also very important to build that V shape? Well, because just like I said earlier, you can't change your physical structure. You can't change your bone structure. You can only, change the illusion of how your body looks. For example, I did not grow up with the biggest shoulders, but I did make them rounder by doing my lateral raises, by building that side delt. I don't have these cap shoulders simply because I went to the gym a few times and that's it, right? I wasn't genetically born like this. I grew specifically the lateral delt, which is usually one of the more underdeveloped parts of the deltoid muscles. For those that don't know, that just means shoulders. But why specifically should you focus on the lateral delt as opposed to the front or the rear? Well, the lateral delt is what gives you more of that illusion when it comes to a V-shaped body. Because whether you're looking at yourself from a front angle like this or a side angle like this, it is usually that lateral delt which gives you that roundness in the shoulder. Whether you're posing or hitting a front double bicep, whatever it is, it's usually an underdeveloped lateral delt, which makes your front or your overall shoulders look smaller, flatter, and just, overall less aesthetic. And if you pair that up with big lats, that's what gives you that V-shaped body. So those are the 2 main muscles which you should always focus on. If you're gonna get anything from this video, it should be those 2. But moving on to the other parts of the shoulder, which also, build up that V shape. If you really want to refine and get an actual admirable physique, you should never neglect any of them, no matter how important they are. Although the lats and the lateral delts are basically, what you should prioritize, doesn't mean that you should neglect any of the other ones if you are going to train. But yeah, when it comes to lateral delt, any kind of dumbbell lateral raises or cable raises, if you have that, or machine raise, I would recommend that over a dumbbell lateral raise. Most of the time, doesn't mean that you should, throw out any kind of dumbbell lateral raise, but I do always recommend that you focus on these because they do give you a much bigger stretch, and it is scientifically proven that any exercise which gives you high tension in the stretch position is going to stimulate more muscle growth. But yeah, moving on to the front and rear delt. These are also very important. Why? Because you don't just want, that lateral delt definition. The front and rear delt play a role as well, right? And just overall giving you that whole 3D shoulder look. But anyways, don't ask why, but the shoulders is just the main muscle which everybody looks at and always identifies you as being attractive, right? That's always the main thing that people notice in you if you work out. So don't neglect these. How do you hit a front and a rear delt? Well, front delt can be hit with any kind of pressing movement. I would definitely recommend you get a strong shoulder press. That's always going to really develop your front delt. But any other strong pressing movement like an incline dumbbell press or a flat bench press will also hit the front delt very well. But when it comes to the rear delt, that's something that a lot of people neglect oftentimes because it's a very small muscle, and typically people have it at the end of their workout routine, so they just end up skipping it. However, that is a big mistake because just like the lateral delt, it also builds that 3D shoulder look. Not as much as the lateral delt, but it definitely plays a role as well. So how do you hit that? By doing any kind of reverse dumbbell fly with very light dumbbells, or once again, if you have access to a machine or a cable, doing that instead. But yeah, moving on to the biceps. This is another very important muscle group in order to build that V-shaped body. Not necessarily whenever you're looking at a physique head on, but definitely when hitting some kind of a double bicep or just overall, building that aesthetic physique. Biceps play a big role because although they are not most of the arm size, the triceps is actually more of the arm size than the biceps. They do give that, I always like to say the triceps give the arm size while the biceps give the arm aesthetics. But yeah, specifically targeting the long head of the bicep, which is what gives you that that peak, kind of like that classic Arnold peak. But yeah, the way that you train that is by doing some kind of bicep curl where your arm is behind you or where your shoulder is behind you, kind of like a Bayesian curl, or doing an incline dumbbell curl if that's what you have available. But anyways, finally, if you want to build that aesthetic physique, focus. Always train your chest, of course, but you want to focus on that upper chest. Why? Because that is usually, once again, a part of that specific muscle, just like the lateral delt, which is neglected or underdeveloped. Why? Because it's a part of the chest which can only actually be hit in a specific angle if you're pressing in a specific angle. Which is why if you're gonna hit your upper chest, you gotta do some kind of incline movement. Whether that is an incline fly or an incline dumbbell press or an incline barbell press, whatever your preference is. But always start your routine off with this, because this is what gives you that armored chest plate look in your chest, that fullness. Very rarely are you gonna have an underdeveloped lower or middle chest, so focus on that. But yeah, if you do things right, you actually prioritize these muscles, but also, being well-rounded, training legs, everything else, you should not have a hard time building that aesthetic V-shaped physique. But yeah, if you would like to work one-on-one with me, there's a link in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.